what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here. So today's a very special video because I've been wanting to do this for quite some time, but I haven't been able to come to do it because I've been so worried about what people are going to think about this, because I am going to be sharing with you guys some of my very first stories I ever wrote. So if you guys have been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I've been working on a couple different writing projects over the course of the last year. And that has been a mystery novel that I've been working on since I was a senior in high school, and is coming up on its 4th year of still being in draft 0. And I decided to work on a poetry collection, which I'm still teetering about whether or not I want to continue with, because I just don't feel super inspired to continue with it at the moment. I'm still kind of playing around with it, seeing what I can do, but it's kind of working its way out of my work in progress. And then finally, a urban fantasy series that I have been thinking of for a while, that I've been gathering research for, that I should be starting to research here in the new year. But I wanted to kind of go down a memory lane a little bit and pick out a few of my stories that I remember vividly writing at some point in my life. The first one being the one I remember the first story I ever wrote, and the first idea for a story I had ever thought of. And at the time, I was not thinking I was going to be an author. I just really liked reading a lot at the time, and I was really inspired by a lot of different things that I had been consuming in media, in like the movies and stuff like that. So I started writing at that time, which was about the 5th grade. So this first story I'm gonna read you guys is something I wrote when I was 10 years old. And let me say, I took this story and wrote either 5 or 6 other stories with it, because I was really inspired to do kind of short fiction in a way at the time, and I also had to write stuff every day in this journal I had when I was in the 5th grade that we would end up sharing. Somebody would end up sharing what they wrote every day in class, and it was something that my teacher thought would be really great to encourage the creative process and stuff like that. And I was so proud of this when I wrote it, because I didn't think I could actually write anything like this, and I honestly am still very proud of myself considering the fact that this is 10-year-old me. But I think that if I was to go back to this, I could make it something really interesting. And it was a bit of a self-insert, because at the time when I was 10, I didn't know that self-insert was kind of bad. But for a 10-year-old, like, how do you expect them to not put themselves in their own story? I changed my name a little bit, but it was something that I was super proud of. And this is heavily inspired at the time by the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because when I was about 8 years old, when those movies first started coming out or so, I loved them so much. They were some of my favorite movies to go see, other than the Harry Potter movies that were coming out too, and I was really inspired by them to write this story. So this is the first in the series that I wrote, which is called Captain Blackship and the Sea Serpent of Doom. This is a whole story following Captain Blackship and his adventures with his son, and then later on another character who they actually save in this story. Keep in mind, this was 10-year-old me, so it's not going to be the best. One day, as the Flying Mermaid was out sailing, Captain Blackship had just gotten a telegram from the town of Black Island saying that a 10-year-old girl named Gabby Cornell was kidnapped by a 4-mile-long sea serpent. Very specific, mind you. Captain Blackship knew a serpent that was 4 miles long. He had fought it on his last journey to Tortuga. And there's the Pirates of the Caribbean references that I just couldn't help but use. "How can this be?" he questioned. "I thought I killed that beast." Apparently, he didn't. So Captain Blackship climbed to the top deck and announced, "Avast, ye shipmates! We are to go to Serpent Island to save a young girl." "Aye, Captain," the crew proclaimed, and off they set for Gabby. I was gonna read the rest of it, but honestly, that's a pretty decent place to stop, because this is kind of cringy looking back at it, but like I said, this was a story I was so passionate about when I was a little kid. Like, I just wanted to write something that was inspired by the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because I loved them so much growing up. And I wanted then to also include myself in the story, because I wanted to be the person that was being saved, because when I was 10 years old, I was so in love with the idea of being saved by a knight in shining armor kind of idea, as many young girls are, not all, but many. And the whole story pretty much goes into the son of the Captain Crypt being able to go into the water and save Gabby, and they're like 10. They were basically, I wrote them to be about my age, and they didn't like fall in love or anything, but they became very close, and the rest of the stories like go as they get older, and eventually, you know, my character and Crypt end up getting married, but not for many, many years. And so I don't know. It was something that I really wanted to write when I was in the 5th grade. And do I think it's a little cringy? Yes, definitely. The writing is definitely not something that I would do now, but I think that if I was to take this story and rework it, I could make it into something a little bit more interesting. So this next one is only like a page front and back, but I wrote 2 chapters of it because it was going to be a chapter book, and I think this was about when I was in like the 8th grade or so, because this is a vampire story, and this was when I was starting to get involved with vampire stories. I think at this time I was getting into either the Morganville Vampires, or I was getting into the Vampire Kisses series by Ellen Shriver, because my cousin and my grandma had read them and they said that I might like them. So I read them, and it was very romantic, very rom-com-y vampire stories. It was like the Twilight before Twilight almost kind of thing. And I think at that time I was really inspired to write something about a vampire. And I also think it might have been partially inspired by the Thirst series by Christopher Pike, because it's about a vampire who's kind of really old, and she's trying to like find out about her family or something like that. I don't even remember, honestly. It's been so long since I wrote this, but this is called Layers of a Vampire's Unknown Heart. And the first chapter is like almost 1 full page front and back, so I'm going to read through it. All was quiet on my first morning coming from the dead. My mother was screaming with my father holding her hand. The witch doctor pronounced me a girl, and my parents named me Charlotte. Charlotte Marie Dracula. Oh yeah, I made her part of the Dracula family. I forgot about that. My mother told me that I am the great-great-granddaughter of the famous Dracula. His daughter was named Sarah. Her daughter Monica was after her. Monica had my mother Carolina, and then me. I was very specific when I was starting to write. My mother also told me that I was only half a vampire. Because my father is human, we've had to hide from the vampire community, so mother would not be beheaded for her crime. A little bit of Vampire Academy going on in there, I think. My father may be mortal, but my mother refused to turn him. She loved him too much. Her mother understood, but was not happy. After the vampire community found out about the marriage, the vampiras, the head of the community, put my mother in the guillotine. Oh, that's quite dark, Gabs. Luckily, my father saved her before she and myself were both killed. Oh yeah, because she was still pregnant. That night, I was born. If my mother had given birth to me in her cell, I would have been taken and killed by the vampiras. Yeah, there's a little bit of Twilight going on in there for some reason. I don't even know, because I never really even read the Twilight books, but I did watch the movies when I was younger, so that might be something. After I was born, my parents found a home in Sacramento, California. Sacramento is one of the towns that is heavily protected from vampires. No vampires, even the vampiras, can step foot without permission from the mayor. So why the hell are they there, Gabby? Why did you put them there if they're not even allowed there? Because Grandma Monica was a good friend of the mayor allowed us to stay here. Oh. Well, that just solves everything. And ever since, for the last 1,599 years, my family has lived here. What? Of course, my father did die, and we miss him terribly. Well, duh, he's a human. He's gonna die at some point. He can't live for 1,599 years, which again, weirdly specific. So that's the first chapter. Like, that was kind of like the prologue to this whole story. And I don't even remember where the story was going. I wrote so many chapters of it. I think there was a love triangle somewhere in there, and somebody was finding out she was a half vampire, and I don't know, like, just something that I think I was super inspired to write, because I think at the time I wrote this, I was getting involved with vampire literature and things like Twilight. I watched the movies when I was younger. I think I was getting into Vampire Kisses. I think I was starting to get into Morganville and Vampire Academy, and I was like obsessed with them when I was a lot younger. This was like before I got into like Beautiful Creatures, because Beautiful Creatures I got into when I was like either a sophomore or junior in high school. I think one I want to do next is one I wrote when I was in high school. I think I wrote this. I remember writing down an outline for this when I was in high school, and I remember doing research for this story, but I don't think it was ever something I really wanted to fully flesh out again, because I thought that when I was writing it, it just wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to, and that my writing skills hadn't really been honed as of yet. So this one, though, was inspired by ancient Greece. This was specifically inspired by Medusa, because at the time, I think I was probably like a freshman in high school. I had gotten more invested in learning about Greek mythology and had read about Medusa and the incredibly awful things that had been done to her, but I changed it a little bit here and there. This first chapter is pretty much her sisters bringing her to life, and then the second chapter goes into the background of Perseus and Medusa. So I think it was supposed to be a continuation of their story and like Medusa being brought back to life, hence the name Medusa's Revenge, and going after Perseus. So I'll read the first chapter because it's really short. It was kind of more of like a little prologue-y kind of thing. I don't think I understood at the time what a prologue was. So, I mean, this is what you get. It was early night in Greece. In the underworld, though, the day was just beginning. The Gorgon sisters and Medusa were standing around the pool of souls. "There she is," one sister said. She grabbed a soul floating and pulled it out. Well, that was simple. The soul went into a body with snake-like hair and ice-cold eyes. Suddenly, the body came to life. "My sisters," the creature said. "I'm alive." "Medusa," a sister said. "It's been so long, too long, but we have good news. We found Perseus." "Finally," Medusa snarled, "he will pay for his crimes. I shall finally have my revenge." Wow. So yeah, still not really honed in skills here, but I think I had a really good idea going because this was, I do remember, something I was really invested in learning about was about Medusa, because I realized that she was kind of given the short stick when it came to her whole life, because not only was she raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple and Athena cursed her for it even though it wasn't her fault. Talk about victim shaming, for God's sake. Then, you know, some guy comes off to just kill her because, you know, she's angry and she decides to use her anger to hurt anyone who tries to come kill her, because obviously they're trying to come kill her because they think she's a monster, but she doesn't see herself as a monster. So I kind of wanted to write this in a way that made her less of a monster and more of a person who's just been really damaged her whole life. And I don't know, I think that you could easily make this into a more feminist story and make it so that Medusa is definitely less of a monster and more of a victim of circumstances. And I really like the idea of it. I think this is definitely one I could go back to in the future and, you know, rewrite it. And finally, probably the most cringy one out of the group is one that I think I also wrote when I was in middle school, because it was very much self-insert. It was also self-insert for the town that I lived in, that I have lived in my whole life. And I even, the second chapter, say day one of blank middle school, which was the school I went to, which it's not called blank. I just don't want to say the name of it because creepers. The only thing I remember about writing this one was that I think it was inspired by some of the realistic fiction I was reading, which was a lot of new guy comes to school, girl that's been there for a while meets him, and they have a insta-love thing. This was before I realized how bad insta-love is and how much I don't like it. I think I was honestly inspired by the Dork Diaries that had been coming out around the time that I was writing this. So there was the Diary of a Wimpy Kid that had come out when I was like in elementary, early middle school. And then a couple years after that, there were these stories called the Dork Diaries that my sister and I read. And I think I was really inspired by that. And I wanted to write something that was kind of in that same style, but it's not good. It's really cringy, but for the sake of sharing my old stories, I will read it to you. So I realize this is not new boy at school. It's new girl at school. That's great. Now I can remember things. That's right. I, Monique, have to move from LA, California to blank, Michigan. Again, no creepers. My parents got better jobs as high school teachers there than LA. But how is that even possible? LA is filled with stars who give you autographs if you ask super nicely. My parents got to teach Miranda Cosgrove, Dakota Fanning, Selena Gomez, and Demi Lovato. You can definitely tell this was me in middle school because I was obsessed with every single one of those ladies when I was in middle school. Why would they want to teach normal kids? It's not fair. That's definitely the voice I would give Monique, and especially the one I would think of when I was in middle school, because I was a bit of a drama queen when I was in middle school and high school, so it doesn't surprise me that I made a drama queen character. My last morning at school, I started to get all the stuff out of my locker. When my friends came by my locker, I didn't look at them. How could I? When I was gonna move from the greatest town on earth to a normal city. I didn't want them to miss me out of pity. I didn't even want them to talk to me out of pity. Oh my God, drama queen alert. Jesus Christ, what was wrong with me? So I just closed my locker and walked to the last day of my first class. That's a weird way to word that. When I got in the classroom, my teacher stopped me. Monique, she said, I understand it's not going to be easy to move, but brace up, chick. Brace up, chick? What? From what I understand, blank's a nice place. Okay, Mrs. Glum's not the coolest teacher in school. She's 55, has gray hair, and acts like she's 20. What's so wrong with that? Jesus, Gab, hostile much? How do you know? Asked Sweetly. Did you go there? Oh, she's a fake one. That's great to see that I created a fake character. No, but my husband did, she replied. I went to my desk and slouched. This was going to be a long last day. Better long than quick. Yeah, that's not good in the slightest. I think this was probably like 7th or 8th grade, whereas the second piece I wrote was probably like 8th grade going into freshman year. So there you guys go. Those are 4 of these stories I vividly remember writing when I was growing up. Some of the first stories I ever remember really getting invested in writing with, and then somehow, for some reason, putting them away and never touching them again. A couple of them I definitely see myself rewriting in the future. Definitely the Captain Black Ship series that I had written in the 5th grade, and Medusa's Revenge, because I really like the idea of that, and it could be something of a feminist novel. I almost wonder if there's already a novel out there that discusses Medusa and the feminism that exudes from her, and, you know, her taking revenge on Perseus. I feel like there's a novel out there somewhere that does that. So if you know of one, let me know down in the comments below. And then the other 2 stories I read, probably not going to ever go back to because they were kind of stupid, or they're not really anything I would be invested in writing again later on. But thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of these, if you liked them, if you thought they were good ideas, if you kind of cringed a little, because I definitely cringed a little bit reading some of those pieces. But yeah, so if you guys would like to hear more about, you know, my writing and anything about that, if there's anything about my stories you would like to know, please leave a comment down below with some questions. I would love to answer them. And as always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!